Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. We live in a world that talks about love, doesn't know how to do it, doesn't know how to live it, and that's what we learn here. We're learning how to live out the skill set of love to build the relationships we want at home, at work, in our community. If we do that enough, heck, we change the world. Now today, I want to give you a little trick. I want to give you a trick that's going to help you to de-escalate some of the more difficult conversations that we get into. Some of the struggles that we have at times communicating, and emotions get going. We have disagreements. We're not always going to agree with each other. We're human. And we have different experiences. We're raised different ways in our families. We have different cultural backgrounds, different ideas about things, and we can all be a bit stubborn sometimes. And so there is a trick that I'm going to give you today of eliminating just one word, eliminating one word from your vocabulary when you are in the midst of an argument or a discussion or a debate. You know, things can sometimes escalate. I'm going to show you one word that can bring that down and bring you into a place of collaboration, of actual discussion, of actual debate where we can disagree, but we're still learning from each other, and get out of that arguing, hurtful kind of thing that causes, tears in relationships, that causes division. One word, and that word is but. B-U-T, but. Strike that one from your vocabulary. And in its place, put and. Now, that may sound odd at first, but let me explain. Let's say that a couple of people are at work and one of them is very adamant that we have got to get this done quickly. It cannot be late. We have got to get this project done. We've got to move. We've got to hustle. We have got to get this done. And the other person has a different point of view. It's not that they're completely disagreeing with that, but they say, yeah, but we've got to be thorough. We've got to make sure we don't make mistakes. We've got to make sure that we go over this carefully and that we're not going to end up redoing it just because we hurried through and got it turned in, but now we're back redoing it later, or it was rejected completely because we didn't do it right. We've got to make sure we do things thoroughly. Now, both of these people have a point. Both of these people are being reasonable at this point. Nobody's saying anything that's insane. Nobody's saying anything that's adamantly wrong. Yes, if there's a deadline, we've got to hustle. We got to get things done. But at the same time, we can't be sloppy. We can't turn in shoddy work. We've got to be thorough. And so we throw out that line. Yes, but here's the problem with that. There tends to be an emotional reaction to that kind of thing. You've created then a hierarchy. When you say, yes, but, yeah, you agreed with them. You didn't discount what they said. But when you use that word but, you created a hierarchy. Yes, what you're saying has some validity to it, but now listen to the thing that's much more valid that I'm about to say. Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not telling you you're wrong, but I'm going to tell you something much more important, that you need to put aside what you're saying in order to listen to what I'm saying. And when we say that word but, it creates that kind of division emotionally, that hierarchy, and people sometimes instinctively get defensive. They feel like you're not listening to them. They feel like that you are dismissing what they say with that one single word. You may not have meant it that way. You may have just been trying to make another valid point. And that's why you can substitute the word and. Somebody says, we've got to be efficient. We've got to move. We got to hustle. We got to get this thing done. You can say yes. And also, we need to make sure we're being thorough at the same time. When you say it like that, just that one word change, now you have created a scenario where both of these things are on equal footing, that both of these concerns are things we need to account for. And you've created a conversation of how they collaborate. How do we move quickly and still find ways of being thorough so we don't turn in shoddy work? That's a different conversation. That's a much different conversation than saying, yes, but we've got to be thorough. Well, what that person might hear is, you're telling me to slow down. You're telling me that you want to go through every detail when what we really need to do is get this turned in, even if it's not perfect. And they're hearing you say, slow down, and they don't want to slow down. when you say and, yeah, we got to move quickly. I totally agree. And at the same time, we got to make sure that we have some thoroughness, that we're making sure we don't make a lot of mistakes. Then you're in a conversation of how do we do that? How do we move quickly, efficiently, and also thoroughly and carefully? Those don't have to be contradictions, but there has to be some strategy. And conversations about strategy are going to be much more productive. You're going to have much more production having conversations about strategy of how do we do both, even though they may be a bit contradictory. How do we have the and? We have this point, and they contradict each other a bit. That's okay. How do we go forward from here with a strategy to do both at the same time? It's a small thing, and it may seem trivial, but we as humans, we're sort of wired up defensively. We get really revved up in what we care about. We get really revved up into our own point of view. And so when we do that and someone contradicts us, sometimes it feels a little threatening. There's a strange thing that happens in the brain sometimes, that when someone says something that violates where you are, it violates your notion, especially if it's a deeply held idea, the same area of the brain lights up as if we are physically attacked. Now, cognitively, we know the difference. We know a big difference between somebody physically attacking us and somebody attacking us emotionally, or someone that's not trying to attack us, but they say something that emotionally affects us. We know the difference intellectually, but not always emotionally. Sometimes we just have emotional reaction because the same area of the brain lights up, whether it is a physical confrontation or an emotional confrontation. And when we get going on something we really care about, something that is important to us, something that we are adamant about, and somebody comes back and says, yeah, but, that can be very discouraging and even offensive if it's something we are really geared up about. And so changing that word, just that word, and saying yes, and let's consider this other thing, and how can we do both, is a completely different conversation. Now, I can almost hear someone saying, yeah, but, are we really supposed to tiptoe around everybody's feelings that way? We can't even contradict them at all. All right, the question is, do you want to work things out? Do you want to have good relationships? Maybe you have an attitude that everybody just needs to quit being so sensitive. I need to be able to say whatever I want to say, and they just need to be able to take it. All right, well, that may be your attitude. And as you have that attitude, we also need to consider, how are we going to get along with people? How can you be you and have your attitude, but also get along and have good, solid relationships? How do we go forward doing both? It is an important skill to learn to accommodate where people are, even if you think they're wrong. It's okay. People have the right to be wrong. We make mistakes. We're human. And when we can accommodate that, just this simple way, eliminate the word but, so you're not creating some kind of hierarchy of, yeah, you said that, but hear what I'm saying. But and, yes, I hear what you're saying. And at the same time, let's consider this. And when you do that, it puts you into a place where you can have more conversation. You're not then debating on which is better or which is the hierarchy. You're not putting that person in a position of having to defend their point of view because now you've put it in second place. You've rank ordered it lower than theirs. And you can actually explore more questions. You can say, and I'm concerned about this. Help me understand where you're coming from. Help me understand, as I'm concerned about this part, but I recognize that yours is equally valid. Help me understand where you're coming from. Let me give you another little trick. Some people haven't thought through their position. If you put yourself in a position where you can have conversation, not by contradicting people, but by saying, I want to have an equal conversation of what I'm concerned about. Help me, though, to understand where you're coming from. As people talk about where they're coming from, sometimes they'll have revelation. Sometimes they really haven't thought through where they're coming from. Sometimes they're just reacting. And so when we put ourselves in a position to have conversation, by not just contradicting someone, not putting rank order to what they're concerned about lower than what we're concerned about, but we keep everything in a conversational tone. Yes, I see that. And I also see this. So as I'm concerned about this part, help me understand why you're so concerned about that part. They might actually come around to seeing that they're overreacting. They might actually come around to seeing that, okay, yeah, we do need to be more thorough in this. I've kind of gotten caught up in the panic and I'm rushing. people haven't always thought through their position. If we keep things conversational, we don't offend people, we don't attack them, we don't put them down for what they're thinking because they're wrong and we're right, but we keep everything on a conversational, collaborative level, you may find they come around to your way of thinking. Not every time, doesn't work every time, but people don't always think through their positions. And if you ask good questions, because you're now in conversation, you're collaborating, sometimes people can think through things as they're telling you and realize they're not always on solid footing. They're not always where they want to be in their own argument when they have to actually articulate it. So ask them, keep it on that conversational, collaborative level. How can we go forward doing both? Help me understand why you think that your position needs to be priority here. Help me understand that. People may actually come around to your way of thinking on occasion because they've actually had an opportunity to think through it. These are the tricks of the relationship. These are sort of the tricks of the trade on building relationships. It's not always big, grand gestures. It's these nuances of having the kindness and the compassion to say, yes, I get it. I hear what you're saying. And also, let's think about this. Instead of, yes, but let me tell you something more important. Those kind of nuances put you in a position to have conversation. When you have conversation, we learn from each other. We develop. We usually come up with better solutions when we're actually having a conversation. So try it. It takes some practice. I know you've been saying yes, but to every conversation, probably since you were 4. I get it. These things are not always easy to unlearn and relearn, but work on it. Catch it. Whenever you say yes, but catch yourself, correct yourself, and learn to say, okay, and let's also think about this. Practice it. See what it does for your relationships. See what it does for your conversations at work, in your community, and at home. See what it does. And I think you'll find you'll have better conversations and better communication, and that builds better relationships. And that's my thoughts today as we are working to build the healthy, happy, thriving relationships that we all want, need, and deserve. As always, please go to my website, markahicks.com. You'll find a lot of good stuff there, including easy links to my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. I am grateful to all the folks at the Learning Love Foundation for bringing this message to you. You can find out more about the Learning Love Foundation at learninglovefoundation.com. I also want to thank my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Production, and I want to thank all of you for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.